Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim sat in the Great Council chamber and tried not to let his frustration show on his face. He had been doing this for 35 years now, sitting in the same chair, listening to the same dismissive voices, watching the same casual arrogance play out before his eyes. Around him, representatives from hundreds of alien species filled the massive circular room. Their voices echoed off the crystal walls as they debated matters of galactic importance. Today, Hyun-woo had brought a proposal to share human defensive shield technology with smaller council members who could not afford their own research programs. It was good technology. Human engineers had spent decades developing it. The shields could protect civilian ships from pirates and natural hazards. He thought it was a generous offer. High Counselor Vexithara, a tall being with blue skin and too many arms, barely glanced at the proposal before speaking. His voice carried across the chamber with practiced authority. He said humans were too aggressive to be trusted with sharing defensive technology. He said it might be used for military purposes. He said the council would take the matter under advisement, which everyone knew meant they would ignore it completely. The other council members murmured their agreement. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wanted to discuss it further. The proposal that Hyun-woo and his team had worked on for 6 months was dismissed in less than 2 minutes. It was not the first time this had happened. It would not be the last. After the session ended, Hyun-woo walked through the corridors of the council station alone. The station was enormous, a city in space that orbited a neutral star. Thousands of species lived and worked here. Diplomats, traders, scholars, and families from across the galaxy called this place home. Hyun-woo had spent more than half his life here. He knew every corridor, every garden, every quiet place where a tired ambassador could think. He reached his office and activated the secure communication system. Within moments, 2 faces appeared on the screen before him. Director Sang-ho Yoon was in his office on Earth, and Captain Dae-sung Lee was aboard his flagship somewhere in human space. Both men looked tired. They had all been having the same conversation for months now. Sang-ho spoke first. His voice was calm and measured as always. He asked how the council session had gone. Hyun-woo told him. Sang-ho nodded slowly, unsurprised. He said he had been reviewing records from the past 3 decades. Every major human proposal had been rejected. Every request for equal treatment had been delayed or denied. Every attempt at genuine cooperation had been met with condescension or exploitation. Captain Dae-sung added his own observations. He said council ships regularly violated human space boundaries but complained loudly when human vessels did the same. He said council trade inspectors applied different standards to human cargo than to other species. He said his officers were tired of being treated like children who needed constant supervision. Then a 4th voice joined the conversation. Dr. Ji-won Park appeared on the screen, her face serious behind her glasses. She had news that changed everything. Her research teams had been studying the Council's technology sharing agreements, the ones that humanity had signed when they first joined. What she discovered was damning. The agreements required humans to share their research with the Council, but placed severe restrictions on what humans could develop independently. Every major project needed Council approval. Every breakthrough had to be reported. Every innovation was subject to review by Council bureaucrats who took months or years to make decisions. The effect was intentional. It slowed human progress to a crawl. Ji-won had run simulations. She showed them what human technology would look like if they had spent the last 35 years developing freely, without Council restrictions. The difference was staggering. Humanity could have been decades ahead of where they were now. The Council had not been helping them. The Council had been holding them back. The 4 of them sat in silence for a long moment. Then Sang-ho asked the question they were all thinking. What if humanity simply left? What if they withdrew from the Council entirely? Not with threats or anger, just a quiet departure. Close the embassies, sever the communication networks, return to their own space, and focus on their own development. Hyun-woo felt something shift in his chest. It was relief. The idea of finally walking away from this endless frustration felt like opening a window in a stuffy room. But he had to be sure. He asked if Earth's leadership would support such a decision. Sang-ho said he had been discussing it with them for weeks. The answer was yes. Captain Dae-sung said his fleet was ready to return home whenever ordered. The ships were in good condition. The crews were loyal. They could execute a complete withdrawal within 6 months if needed. G1 said her scientists were eager to work without council restrictions. She believed humanity would make rapid progress once freed from bureaucratic chains. They talked for another hour, working through the details. How to announce it, how to manage the logistics, how to ensure every human in council space could return home safely. They decided to make it simple and dignified. No accusations, no demands, no drama. Just a polite announcement that humanity was choosing a different path. 3 days later, Hyunwoo stood before the council once more. This time he had not brought a proposal. He had brought a statement. He kept it brief. He thanked the council for accepting humanity as members 35 years ago. He acknowledged the relationships that had been built. Then he announced that humanity had decided to withdraw from the Galactic Council and pursue an independent path forward. The chamber fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Vexithara laughed. It was not a kind laugh. He said humanity was making an emotional decision they would regret. He said they would be back within a year, begging to rejoin. Other council members joined in the laughter. Some looked amused. Others looked annoyed that humanity was wasting the council's time with theatrics. Hyunwoo waited for the laughter to die down. Then he spoke again. He said this was not a negotiating tactic. It was a final decision. Humanity wished the council well and looked forward to maintaining cordial relations with individual species. But institutional membership was no longer in humanity's best interest. He bowed slightly, turned, and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the council members were already moving on to other business. Trade Minister Bolkan made a joke about dividing human trade routes among more reliable species. Someone else suggested colonizing the systems humanity would abandon. They were not worried. They were certain humans would return. That night, Hyunwoo sent a coded message to every human embassy, every human ship, and every human installation in council space. The message was simple. It was time to come home. Over the next 6 months, humanity would execute the most organized withdrawal in galactic history. They would do it quietly, professionally, and completely. As Hyunwoo looked out at the stars from his office window, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Humanity was about to discover what they could truly become when nobody was holding them back. The council thought they were losing a minor member. They had no idea they were losing something far more valuable. They would understand eventually, but by then it would be far too late. Director Sang Ho-yoon stood in the Earth Diplomatic Corps headquarters, looking at a map that showed every human presence in council space. There were 147 embassies, thousands of human citizens living and working on alien worlds, trade stations, research outposts, and cultural centers scattered across dozens of systems. All of it had to be closed down and brought home. He had 6 months to do it. 6 months to execute the largest organized withdrawal in human history. The plan was already in motion. Every embassy had received detailed instructions. Every citizen had been contacted. Every ship had been given coordinates. The operation had to be perfect. No panic, no incidents, no reason for the council to claim humans were irresponsible. The first embassy to close was on a world called Tavrin, a peaceful planet of artists and philosophers. The human ambassador there was a woman named Yoonji Song. She had spent 12 years building relationships with the Tavrin people. She loved the planet and its culture, but orders were orders. Yoonji called a final meeting with her Tavrin contacts. She explained that humanity was withdrawing from the council. She thanked them for their friendship. She said individual humans might still visit as tourists or scholars, but the official embassy was closing. The Tavrin were confused and sad, but Yoonji gave them no details beyond the official statement. Within a week, the embassy was empty, cleaned, and locked. A polite sign on the door thanked the Tavrin for their hospitality. This scene repeated itself across council space. Embassies closed one by one. Human diplomats packed their belongings, paid their final bills, and left with quiet dignity. Some alien species asked questions. Humans answered politely but vaguely. Some species offered better terms to make them stay. Humans declined with thanks. Some species seemed relieved to see them go. Humans wished them well and departed. Captain Dae-sung Lee commanded the fleet withdrawal from his flagship, a vessel called the Seoul Rising. His job was more complex than closing buildings. He had to coordinate the movement of hundreds of human ships through Council space. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger transports, and research ships all needed to return home without incident. Dae-sung was a careful man. He planned routes that avoided conflict zones and busy trade lanes. He scheduled departures so human ships would not create traffic problems. He made sure every vessel followed Council space regulations perfectly. When Council traffic controllers contacted human ships, the responses were professional and courteous. Yes, they were leaving Council space. No, there was no emergency. Yes, they would follow all designated routes. Thank you for your assistance. Some Council military commanders watched the human withdrawal with suspicion. Admiral Korvex of the Draxian fleet sent patrol ships to shadow human vessels. He seemed to expect some kind of trick or trap, but the human ships just kept moving steady and calm, following their flight plans exactly. After 2 weeks, Korvex stopped sending patrols. There was nothing to watch. The humans were simply leaving. Trade Minister Bolkan started noticing problems in the 3rd month of the withdrawal. Small problems at first. A shipment of human-made medical supplies did not arrive on schedule. A trade route that humans had maintained for decades was suddenly empty, and pirates moved in. A technical support contract ended, and there was nobody to replace the human engineers who had been doing the work. Bolkan pulled up economic reports and started calculating. He realized that humans had been involved in far more galactic commerce than anyone had noticed. They did not dominate any markets, but they were present in hundreds of small but important niches. Medical equipment, agricultural technology, infrastructure maintenance, computer systems, little things that kept the galactic economy running smoothly. He brought his concerns to the Council, but Vexithara dismissed them. The High Counselor said humans had been providing these services because they needed Council currency. Now they would have no income. They would come back within months, desperate to resume trade. The Council just needed to wait. The humans would beg for new contracts soon enough. Scholar Lyra Esch had a different reaction to humanity's departure. She was a young researcher from Silveria, who had spent years studying human culture. She found them fascinating. Their art, their music, their literature, their philosophy. Humans thought differently than other Council species. They were creative in unexpected ways. She had been planning to publish a major study about human cultural development. When she heard about the withdrawal, Lyra Esch rushed to the human embassy on Silveria's capital world. She wanted to conduct one final interview to understand why they were leaving. But when she arrived, the embassy was already empty. The building was clean and sealed. A message on the door thanked the Silvari people for their friendship and hospitality. That was all. Lyra Esch felt a deep sadness. She had tried to tell her colleagues that humans were special, that they deserved more respect and attention. Nobody had listened. Now it was too late. She would never finish her research. The humans were gone, and they had taken their culture with them. She wondered if she would ever see a human again. By month 5, human presence in Council space had shrunk to almost nothing. Only a few ships remained, finishing final contracts and picking up the last citizens. The galaxy felt different somehow, quieter, less interesting, but most Council members did not notice. They were busy dividing up the trade routes and territories that humans were abandoning. The last human to leave Council space was Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim himself. He stayed until the very end, making sure every citizen got home safely. Every contract was fulfilled. Every obligation was met. When the final day came, he packed one small bag with his personal belongings. Everything else he left behind as a donation to the station's museum. He walked through the Council station one last time, saying goodbye to places he had known for decades. The garden where he used to eat lunch. The observation deck where he watched ships arrive and depart. The small cafe where he met with other ambassadors for informal discussions. These places had been his life. Now he was leaving them forever. At the departure dock, Hyun-woo boarded a small shuttle. The pilot was a young woman named Hae-won. She asked if he was ready to go home. Hyun-woo looked back at the massive station one final time. Then he nodded. Yes, he was ready. It was time to see what humanity could become without the Council's interference. As the shuttle pulled away and accelerated toward human space, Hyun-woo felt the weight of decades lifting from his shoulders. Behind them, the Council station grew smaller in the view screen. Ahead lay Earth and humanity's future. Whatever that future held, it would be theirs alone. Back on the Council station, High Counselor Vexithara gave a speech to the assembled members. He mocked humanity's departure, calling them emotional and short-sighted. He predicted they would return within a year, humbled and desperate. The council chamber filled with laughter and agreement. Several members proposed plans for how to extract better terms from the humans when they inevitably came back. None of them noticed that something fundamental had changed. Humanity was gone. The galaxy had lost something it did not know it needed, and by the time the council understood what they had lost, it would be far too late to get it back. The humans had walked away quietly with dignity intact. That quiet departure would echo through the galaxy for decades to come. 5 years had passed since humanity closed its last embassy and returned home. In that time, the galaxy had continued as it always had. The council met and debated. Species traded and competed. Wars started and ended. Life went on. But humanity was nowhere to be seen. They had disappeared behind their borders and gone completely silent. Inside human space, everything had changed. Dr. Ji-Won Park stood in a research facility on Mars, watching her team test something that should have been impossible. It was a new kind of engine, one that operated on principles the council said could not work. But it did work. The test vessel vanished from one end of the solar system and appeared at the other in seconds, not hours. Ji-Won had spent the last 5 years doing what she loved most. Pure research without restrictions, without bureaucracy, without council oversight committees that took months to approve every experiment. When humans left the council, they had torn up all those restrictive technology sharing agreements. Scientists could finally work freely, sharing ideas across disciplines without asking permission. The results were extraordinary. Quantum computing had advanced by decades. Humans had cracked problems in exotic matter manipulation that council scientists said would take centuries to solve. Medical technology had leaped forward. Energy systems were more efficient. Materials science had revolutionized manufacturing. Every field of research was accelerating at a pace that would have been impossible under council rules. Young Mai Choi was the star of Ji-Won's research team. She was 28 years old now, brilliant and fearless. She had designed the new faster-than-light drive that was being tested. The council used engines based on compressed space bubbles. Young Mi's design used something completely different, manipulating the fabric of reality itself in ways council science had never imagined. When the test results came back, Young Mi ran the calculations 3 times to be sure. Her drive could cross distances in days that took council ships months. Human vessels equipped with this technology would be faster than anything else in the galaxy, and this was just the beginning. She already had ideas for improvements. Captain Dae-Sung Lee was overseeing a different kind of revolution. At shipyards orbiting Earth and its colonies, a new generation of human warships was under construction. These vessels incorporated all the new technologies that researchers like Ji-Won and Young Mi had developed. They were smaller than council battleships but far more advanced. The new ships had defensive shields that could absorb energy weapon fire and convert it to power. They had sensors that could detect vessels across entire star systems. Their weapons were precise and powerful, but most importantly, they were fast. With Young Mi's drive technology, these ships could move across human space in hours, responding to any threat before it became serious. Dae-Sung walked through the construction bay where the first of these new ships was taking shape. He had served in the military for 40 years, commanding vessels built with council-approved technology that always seemed outdated. Now he was seeing something completely different. These ships represented what human engineering could achieve without artificial limits. But the changes were not just technological. Human society itself was transforming. Without the pressure to conform to council standards and expectations, human culture was experiencing a renaissance. Artists were creating works that explored purely human themes instead of trying to appeal to alien sensibilities. Musicians were experimenting with sounds and styles that had nothing to do with galactic trends. Writers were telling stories that reflected human values and dreams. Philosophers and thinkers were asking new questions about humanity's place in the universe. If they did not need the council, what did they need? What were human goals and values when they were not trying to fit into someone else's system? The discussions were energetic and sometimes heated, but they were genuine. Humanity was rediscovering itself. Human colonies were expanding too. Without council regulations about which systems could be settled, humans were exploring regions the council had deemed too difficult or unprofitable. Young Mi's faster-than-light drive made it possible to reach distant systems easily. Within 3 years, humanity had established colonies in a dozen systems that the Council had ignored. These colonies thrived. Human engineers had developed new terraforming techniques that worked on worlds the Council considered uninhabitable. Human farmers were growing crops in environments that alien species found too harsh. Human miners were extracting resources from asteroids in ways that were more efficient than Council methods. Humanity was no longer confined to its small corner of the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was starting to notice problems. Trade Minister Bolkan stood before the Council Assembly, with economic reports that painted a troubling picture. The loss of human trade had created cascading failures across multiple sectors. Routes that humans had maintained were now pirate havens. Resources humans had provided were no longer available. Several Council species who had depended on human goods were facing economic difficulties. Bolkan proposed sending a delegation to negotiate with humanity. They could offer better trade terms, perhaps even some of the equal treatment that humans had requested years ago. But High Counselor Vexthera refused. He insisted that humanity needed the Council more than the Council needed humanity. They would come back eventually, probably within the next few years. The Council just needed to wait. What Vexthera did not know was that humanity had no intention of returning. On Earth, Director Sang Ho Yoon was reviewing reports from across human space. Every indicator pointed in the same direction. Humanity was thriving. Economic growth was strong. Scientific progress was accelerating. Social cohesion was improving. Every measure of human well-being had increased since leaving the Council. Sang Ho authorized the next phase of expansion. More colonies, more research facilities, more shipyards. Humanity was building a civilization that could stand on its own, that did not need anyone's approval or permission. They were proving something important, not to the Council but to themselves. They were capable of greatness when they were free to pursue it. In her laboratory, young Mi was already working on the next breakthrough. She had ideas about manipulating time itself, creating shields that operated in multiple dimensions, and communication systems that could send messages instantly across any distance. These concepts would have taken decades to develop under Council restrictions, with endless approval processes and technology sharing requirements. Now she could pursue them freely, collaborating with the best minds humanity had to offer. The work was challenging and exciting. Every day brought new discoveries. Every month brought new capabilities. Humanity was not just catching up to Council technology. They were surpassing it, moving into territories of science that Council researchers had never explored. As the 5th year of isolation ended, humanity stood at a crossroads. They had proven they could survive without the Council. They had built a thriving civilization, advanced their technology beyond anything they had achieved as Council members, and rediscovered their cultural identity. The question now was not whether they could make it alone. The question was why they would ever want to go back. The Council still did not understand. They thought humanity was struggling in isolation, desperately trying to maintain their independence while secretly hoping for reconciliation. They could not have been more wrong. Humanity was not struggling. They were soaring. And soon, very soon, the Council would realize just how much they had underestimated the species they had dismissed so casually. 10 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. Admiral Korvax of the Draxian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the sensor displays with growing irritation. His battle group was on patrol near what used to be the border of human space. Intelligence reports suggested that humans had been expanding their territory, claiming systems in regions the Council had ignored. Korvax wanted to see these humans for himself. He remembered how they used to operate in Council space, with their outdated ships and their careful diplomacy. He wondered if they were still using the same old technology, still flying vessels that were decades behind Council standards. His tactical officer reported a contact. One human vessel, small, apparently alone in an uncharted system ahead. Perfect, Korvax thought. This was an opportunity to demonstrate Council superiority. He ordered his ships to intercept. 6 Draxian warships, the pride of their fleet, moved to surround the lone human vessel. It would be a simple matter to force them to submit to inspection, to show them that the Council still controlled these regions of space. The human ship was smaller than Korvax expected. It looked nothing like the vessels humans used to fly. The design was sleek and strange, with lines that seemed to flow rather than angle. His sensors could barely get a solid reading on it. The ship seemed to shift somehow, as if it existed slightly out of phase with normal space. Korvax opened a communication channel. He identified himself and demanded that the human vessel stop and prepare for inspection. There was a pause. Then a voice responded. It was calm, polite, and completely unfazed. The voice belonged to Commander Young-Mi Choi of the Human Exploration Fleet. She thanked him for the contact but declined his inspection request. Young-Mi explained that this system was within human territorial claims. She requested that the Draxian vessels leave. It was a polite request, not a threat, but something in her tone suggested she expected to be taken seriously. Korvax felt his anger rising. This human was dismissing him. She was treating his battle group as if they were irrelevant. He ordered his weapon systems to target the human vessel. Not to fire, just to lock on. It was a standard intimidation tactic. He wanted to see the human panic, to watch them realize how outmatched they were. His tactical officer confirmed target lock. All 6 Draxian ships had their weapons aimed at the small human vessel. They could destroy it in seconds, then something impossible happened. The human ship vanished. One moment it was there, centered in their targeting systems. The next moment it was gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply gone. Korvax shouted orders to his sensor operators. Find it. Where did it go? What happened? The bridge erupted in confused activity. Seconds later, alarms screamed across all 6 Draxian ships simultaneously. The human vessel had reappeared behind their formation. It had moved faster than their sensors could track, repositioning itself in a location that should have taken hours to reach. Korvax stared at his displays in disbelief. That kind of movement was impossible with any technology he knew. Then things got worse. Every weapon system on every Draxian ship went offline at the same instant. Completely offline, the tactical board showed red across all stations. Korvax tried to understand what was happening. There had been no energy discharge from the human vessel, no weapons fire, no hostile action he could detect, yet somehow his entire battle group had been disarmed. Young-Mi's voice came through the communication channel again. She sounded apologetic. She explained that she had remotely disabled their weapon systems as a precautionary measure. She assured Korvax that the effect was temporary. Once his ships crossed back into Council territory, their weapons would reactivate automatically. She again requested that they leave human space. Korvax sat frozen in his command chair. His battle group, 6 of the most advanced warships in the Draxian fleet, had been neutralized without a single shot fired. The human had disabled them as easily as an adult might take toys from children. His pride screamed at him to fight somehow, to refuse, to do something. But his training and experience told him the truth. He had already lost. He ordered the retreat. His ships turned and began moving back toward Council space. As they crossed the border that Young-Mi had indicated, their weapon systems came back online exactly as she had promised. Korvax immediately ordered his communications officer to prepare an emergency report to the Council. They needed to know what had just happened. They needed to understand what humanity had become. The report reached the Council 3 days later. At first, many members dismissed it as exaggeration or equipment malfunction, but Korvax had detailed sensor logs. The data was clear. The human vessel had demonstrated technology that exceeded Council capabilities by decades. Faster-than-light movement without traditional drives, remote systems interference without detectable energy signatures, defensive capabilities that made their ship effectively untouchable. Scholar Lyra Esch had been waiting for this moment. She had spent the last 10 years collecting every scrap of information about human advancement. Fragmentary reports from traders who claimed to have seen human colonies, rumors from explorers who had detected strange energy signatures in systems humans had claimed, whispers from smugglers who swore they had seen human ships moving at impossible speeds. She compiled everything into a comprehensive report and presented it to the Council. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity had not just survived their isolation, they had thrived. In every measurable category, they had surpassed Council technology. Faster ships, better weapons, superior sensors, more efficient energy systems, advanced materials. Breakthrough after breakthrough in fields the Council thought they dominated. The Council chamber fell silent as Lyra Esch presented her findings. She showed projections of human territorial expansion, far larger than anyone had realized. She displayed analysis of human technological capabilities, advancing at a rate that seemed impossible. She concluded with a simple statement. The species the Council had dismissed as primitive newcomers had evolved beyond them. Humanity was now the most technologically advanced civilization in the known galaxy. High Counselor Vexithera sat in his ornate chair, feeling something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Not fear of human aggression or conquest. Humanity had shown remarkable restraint in their encounter with Corvex. They could have destroyed his ships. They chose to disable them instead. No, Vexithera feared something else. Irrelevance. The Council had built its authority on being the center of galactic civilization, the pinnacle of technology and culture. Now a species they had mocked and dismissed had quietly surpassed them, and humanity had done it by walking away, by refusing to play the Council's games, by focusing on their own development instead of seeking Council approval. Trade Minister Bolkan was already calculating the economic implications. If humanity chose to return to galactic commerce, they would dominate it. Their superior technology would make Council goods obsolete. Their faster ships would control trade routes. Their advanced manufacturing would undercut Council prices. The balance of power had shifted completely. Vexithera called for an immediate vote. The Council unanimously agreed to cease all hostile actions near human space, and to begin considering how to approach humanity about renewed relations. But even as they voted, many Council members felt a deep unease. Would humanity even want to talk to them? Did the Council have anything to offer a civilization that had moved so far beyond them? In her ship, now far from the encounter site, young Mi reviewed her report of the incident. She felt no satisfaction in demonstrating human superiority. She had simply been doing her job, defending human territory as calmly and professionally as possible. She wondered if the Council would finally understand what they had lost. Probably not yet, she thought, but they would. Eventually they would. 15 years after humanity's departure, a Council delegation arrived at Earth. The ship that brought them was the finest vessel the Council could provide, a diplomatic cruiser designed to impress. But as they approached Earth's orbital space, the Council delegates could not help but notice the human stations and ships around them. Everything looked different, advanced. The human vessels moved with casual grace that suggested technology far beyond what the Council possessed. High Counselor Vexithera led the delegation himself. It was a gesture of respect and humility that surprised many. Vexithera had spent decades dismissing humanity. Now he was coming to Earth as a supplicant, hoping to repair what he had broken. With him were Trade Minister Bolkan, Scholar Lyra Esh, and representatives from a dozen major Council species. They were received by Director Sang-Ho Yoon, who now held the title of Secretary of Interstellar Affairs. He met them in a simple conference room in Geneva, not in some grand diplomatic hall. The message was clear. This meeting was a courtesy, not a negotiation. Sang-Ho was polite and professional, but there was no warmth in his greeting. Vexithera began with an apology. He said the Council had made mistakes in how they treated humanity. He acknowledged that humans had been dismissed and undervalued. He admitted that the Council had failed to recognize human potential. The apology was sincere. Vexithera had spent 15 years watching humanity surpass his civilization. He knew exactly how badly the Council had miscalculated. Then he made his offer. Full Council membership with unprecedented privileges, equal representation in all Council decisions, fair trade agreements with no restrictive clauses, technology sharing programs where humans would be partners, not subordinates, access to Council resources and support. Everything that humans had asked for decades ago and been denied. Sang-Ho listened carefully. When Vexithera finished, there was a long silence. Then Sang-Ho spoke. His voice was calm and neutral. He thanked the High Counselor for the apology and the generous offer. Then he politely declined. Humanity had no interest in rejoining the Galactic Council. They were content with their current path. They wished the Council well but preferred to continue independently. Vexithera was shocked. He had expected negotiations, perhaps some demands or conditions. He had not expected outright refusal. He asked if there was anything the Council could offer that would interest humanity. Sang-Ho shook his head. There was nothing. Humanity had everything they needed. They had built a thriving civilization without council assistance. They saw no reason to complicate that. Success, Vexathera asked if he could speak with Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim. Perhaps a personal appeal from the man who had represented humanity during those difficult years might help. Sang-ho made a call. To everyone's surprise, Kim agreed to meet with them, but not in any official capacity. He was retired now, living quietly in Seoul. If they wanted to visit him, they could. The delegation traveled to Seoul and found Kim's apartment in a modest building overlooking the Han River. Kim, now in his 70s, received them with the same quiet dignity he had always shown. His small apartment was filled with books and photographs from his years in the diplomatic service. He offered them tea and invited them to sit. Vexathara repeated his apology, this time more personally. He said he regretted not listening to Kim's proposals all those years ago. He said the council had been wrong to dismiss human contributions and potential. He asked if there was any way to make things right. Kim listened with patience and grace. When Vexathara finished, Kim smiled gently. Kim spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. He said he appreciated the apology. He believed it was genuine. But apologies could not change the past. When humans needed friends, the council gave them condescension. When humans offered cooperation, the council gave them exploitation. When humans sought respect, the council gave them mockery. Humans did not leave in anger, and they were not refusing now out of spite. They simply no longer needed what the council offered. They had found their own way. The words were gentle but final. Vexathara felt the weight of them. This was not negotiable. Humanity had moved beyond the council, not just technologically but philosophically. They had learned that external validation was not necessary for self-worth. They had discovered that their own path was better than the one the council had offered. Bolkan asked if humanity would at least consider trade relations. Not as council members, just as independent partners. Sang-ho had already addressed this. Humanity was willing to trade on strictly neutral terms when it benefited both parties, but there would be no special relationships, no preferential treatment, no institutional connections. Each transaction would be evaluated on its own merits. Before the delegation left Earth, they requested a tour of human achievements. Sang-ho arranged it, seeing no reason to refuse. They visited research facilities where Dr. Ji-won Park's teams worked on projects that seemed like magic. They saw laboratories experimenting with dimensional physics and consciousness transfer. They visited shipyards constructing vessels that operated on principles council science had never imagined. They toured human colonies in systems the council had declared uninhabitable. They watched human terraforming technology transform harsh worlds into gardens. They observed human society flourishing in art, literature, music, and philosophy. Everything they saw confirmed what they already knew. Humanity had not just survived. They had become something extraordinary. Scholar Lyra Esch requested a private meeting with Commander Young-mi Choi, who was back on Earth between exploration missions. They met in a small cafe near the spaceport. Lyra Esch admitted that she had tried to warn the council about humanity's potential. She had seen something special in human culture and creativity, but nobody listened to her. She apologized for her species' part in humanity's treatment. Young-mi thanked her for her efforts. She said she appreciated that Lyra Esch had tried, but she explained that humanity's greatest lesson had been learning they did not need the council's approval. The rejection had hurt at first, but it had also freed them. Without the pressure to conform, humanity had discovered who they truly were and what they could truly achieve. In a strange way, the council's dismissal had been a gift. The delegation returned to the council with their report. The message was clear and undeniable. Humanity had moved on. They maintained cordial relations with council species when it suited them. They traded when it was mutually beneficial. But they had no interest in institutional reconciliation. The council that had rejected them was no longer relevant to human ambitions or goals. Years continued to pass. Human exploration ships were discovered charting regions of space no council vessel had ever reached. Human colonies thrived in environments council science declared impossible. Human technology continued advancing at rates the council could not match. Humanity had become what they always could have been, without the council's interference holding them back. The council struggled to adapt to this new reality. Some species began studying human methods, trying to understand how they had achieved such rapid progress. Others maintained that the Council's traditional approaches were still valid. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed. The old order was ending. And it had ended not because of war or conquest, but because one species had quietly walked away and proven they did not need anyone's permission to be great. On a warm spring day, many years after the Council's visit, Hyunwoo Kim sat in a garden near his apartment. He was very old now, but his mind was still sharp. He watched news reports on his tablet about humanity's latest achievements. A new colony in a distant galaxy, a breakthrough in medical technology that would extend human lifespans, a cultural festival celebrating human art and music from across all colonies. Kim smiled quietly, contentedly. They had made the right choice all those years ago. Walking away had not been easy. It had required courage and faith, but it had been the right decision. Sometimes the strongest move was not to fight or argue or demand. Sometimes the strongest move was to simply walk away with dignity and focus on becoming the best version of yourself. The Council had learned their lesson too late. They had lost something irreplaceable, not through malice but through arrogance and blindness. They had held greatness in their hands and dismissed it as ordinary. By the time they realized their mistake, humanity had moved so far beyond them that reconciliation was meaningless. The Council's apology had been sincere, but apologies without consequences were just words. The consequence of their dismissal was permanent. Humanity was gone and they were never coming back.